Edmonton has reported its first cases of Dutch elm disease. Canada has been fighting this fungal disease for decades as it slowly makes its way west, devastating elm tree populations. The loss of these trees is devastating for municipalities, and Edmonton is acting promptly to protect its nearly 90,000 elm trees. Mark Beare joins us to give us the scoop on Dutch elm disease and what we can do to protect our urban canopies. Let's get into it.
My name is Mark Beare, and my role is Director of Infrastructure Operations within the city's Parks and Road Services branch. And so what that means is I've got two major roles depending on the season. In the wintertime, I look after snow and ice control. And in the summertime, I look after open space operations, which includes our turf, horticulture, invasive weeds, pests, and of course, our urban forestry. So that's what we're here to talk about today.
First detected Dutch elm disease in the city of Edmonton. Now, Dutch elm is something I've been hearing about for a long time. Remember hearing it as a kid. So clearly the efforts that the city of Edmonton is doing has helped in the reduction of the spread and prevented it for up until now. So for our audience, let's start there. What is Dutch elm disease?
For sure. So Dutch elm disease is a fungus that's spread amongst elm trees one of two ways. So the way that we're seeing it spread right now in the positive cases that we've got is through a specific beetle. In this case, banded elm bark beetle. So it picks up the fungus and it moves from tree to tree that way. Another way that it spreads is through root grafts. So a lot of our elms, because they're not native, they've been planted in our boulevards and our open spaces. They're fairly close together, and all of those roots interconnect underground. So once one tree is infected, it spreads that disease to neighboring trees through root grafts. And what Dutch elm disease does is it quite simply, it chokes the tree out, and it prevents water and nutrients from flowing to the upper part of the crown. And so that's where you start to see those indications of yellowing leaves, curling, flagging, some dead spots on the crowns of elm trees that you wouldn't otherwise expect to see at that time of the year.
Okay. So what specific measures is the city of Edmonton taking to contain and reduce the spread of Dutch elm disease among these infected trees?
So I'll address what we've been doing for years first, and then, what we're doing.
Yeah, the immediate actions now.
Yeah. So what we've been doing for years, like you said, Dutch elm disease has been around for a long time. It's been creeping its way westward from some major municipalities that have been living with Dutch elm disease for decades. So one of the things that we do to stay on top of it is proactive inspections. So we have a couple of key teams that are responsible for this. Our urban foresters, they're the ones that do the pruning, and they look at the overall tree health and prune on cycles. They inspect every other year. We do the east side of the city one year, and then the west side of the city the next year, and then back and forth. Well, we also have a team of scientists, biologists in our integrated pest management team, and they're looking for all sorts of pests and diseases in a lot of our urban forest. And so they inspect our trees on an annual basis, and they're looking for signs and symptoms of some type of an infection. And that's how we detected this. So they were doing a routine inspection within this community and noticed the signs and symptoms of Dutch elm disease. They know what to look for. And when they saw it, then they contacted our partners. So we have federal and provincial partners, so the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and within the Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation in the government of Alberta. They took some samples and sent it off for testing, and then started intensifying the search within the neighboring community. So once we got the results back that it was in fact Dutch elm disease, then we really moved forward on our action plan. which was really all about containing the spread and minimizing the impact to the rest of the city and neighboring communities.
What does that, action look like now that there are a few infected trees? If you've noticed it, what are those steps to reduce that spread?
The first step is to remove safely all of the infected trees. So we've been doing testing of all of the neighboring trees, and those that have tested positive, they're being removed. And it's important when you do a removal that it's removed in a manner that it's not going to allow that bark beetle to move to other hosts. So that involves removing the tree. It goes into a landfill or is chipped up and incinerated, and removing all of the bark from the stump and then grinding up that stump. So just to really eradicate all of the elm wood that could be in the area that could be a possible host. So the city has removed the 3 infected city-owned trees, as well as 21, I believe it was the last count yesterday, proactive removals of nearby elms. So just to make sure that there wasn't any spread through root grafts or, the possible beetles moving from one infected tree to another. It was really about creating a bit of a buffer zone from where that infected tree was to make sure that there wasn't space for these banded elm bark beetles to move to another host.
The city of Edmonton has these vigorous detection routines, like going in, making sure that all these trees are good. Right here, you have team members who identify the issue and you're addressing it right away, and then you treat the infected trees. What are some policies or things that can be done to ensure the urban forestry health within the city of Edmonton? Here in Winnipeg, down Portage, one of our main roads, all elm trees. And once we started getting Dutch elm disease, all of them had to go. And you know what? Let's actually start there first. For people who are hearing about this, they're like, why should I care? Why does it matter if a couple trees get infected? So, why is it important to be addressing an issue like Dutch elm disease?
Up until August, when we had our first positive cases, Edmonton had the largest population of elm trees that were unaffected by Dutch elm disease in the world. So Edmonton has around 90,000 elm trees that are in our inventory. So we maintain a little over 400,000 open space and boulevard trees. And the elm is the highest density population of any of the trees that we have. So 90,000 elm trees, 22% of our urban canopy that we maintain is elm. So when you think about it in that scale, 22% of our canopy that's at risk, including many of our mature neighborhoods within the city, which are entirely elm. So the beautiful canopy tunnel streets that you see throughout the city and so many Canadian cities with elm trees, that's at risk. And people care a lot about that. And so do we. That's the thing. We've got experts that are a part of this team that have dedicated their lives to making sure that our urban forest has longevity and is thriving. And many people choose the neighborhoods that they live based on the aesthetics. So it's a significant risk and one that Edmontonians care a lot about. And that's why this is so important for Edmontonians and the people who are working on behalf of them to try and preserve and protect our urban forest.
And there's economic and environmental challenges that can come from this as well. Looking at Winnipeg, had to remove a ton of their elm trees because a lot got infected and it was all just one species. The amount of time, because trees don't grow quickly, planting new trees and the cost that comes with that instead of preventative measures. In addition, like the canopy cover. When you just have a bunch of asphalt that's uncovered by trees, anyone who goes on a hike in the forest, when you're in the cover of the forest, it can be nice and cool. The second you get out into the sun, it's blazing hot. So like ensuring the canopy of a city is protected helps reduce a ton of different areas.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, trees offer so much from a socioeconomic perspective. They're carbon sinks, and the older the tree, the more carbon that it takes out of the air and stores. And to lose a mature tree and have it replaced with several smaller trees, it's going to take decades to get to that same level. So that's why it's so important for us to maintain and protect the trees that we have. Edmonton has a really aggressive urban forestry agenda. We're at 13% canopy cover, which includes public and private trees, and also includes our river valley and our natural tree stands and naturalized areas. But based on the modeling and the plans that we want to do for the future city that we want to have, is that we're projecting, and we've got objectives to get to 20% canopy cover by 2071. So that's the plan that we've set forth. In order to do that, we need to plant 2 million trees and shrubs by 2050. And we've got a really aggressive schedule where we're going to achieve that by 2030. So we're moving out on that, which is fantastic. But a big part of us achieving that 20% canopy objective in 2070 is preserving and protecting and maintaining the existing tree stands that we have. Of course, there's modeling for, projected mortality, but to allow a disease like Dutch elm disease, or, another example is emerald ash borer. That's a significant threat to the city with the number of ash trees that we have. To have that be unchecked within the city would really affect the future of our urban canopy and, our goals of achieving that 20% canopy cover.
Exactly. How do these insects, when we're looking at these like bark beetles or emerald ash borer, how are they getting around, especially for newcomers who are moving here to Canada and starting to adjust? We want to help ensure that they avoid actions that can perpetuate or cause issues when we're looking at the urban canopies in our cities.
Yeah, I can address that. And there's three key things that people can do to help prevent the spread of Dutch elm disease. The first one is not to transport firewood from other jurisdictions. The second one, to remove bark beetle habitat. And the third one, to know the signs of Dutch elm disease. So to your question on, Nick, what can people do to help minimize the spread and how did it likely come to Edmonton? It's that first one, transportation of firewood. So when you talk about how is Dutch elm disease spread, through root grafts, which means you're talking about moving from one tree to the next, 5-10 meters at a time. That's going to take a really long time for that to move across Canada. These beetles, they can fly, but really they're not going to be moving from municipality to municipality, crossing provincial borders. Sure, they could be aided by wind, but again, we're talking about a kilometer at a time. So how did Dutch elm disease arrive within our city? Most likely it was on elm wood that was transported into the city. So don't import firewood. In Edmonton, you're not really going to expect to see firewood that's elm, but still it would have come from somewhere in some infected wood that somebody, I don't suspect there's any malice. It's just people being careless and not really understanding the significant impacts that transporting wood from one municipality to the next across provincial borders can have to another city.
For the city of Edmonton, what sort of resources or educational programs are available in terms of increasing awareness around these variable diseases or pests that can infect urban forests? And in addition to like newcomers, are these services available in a multitude of languages? So if someone's coming in, they can read it in a language that they're most comfortable with.
So we've created a resource specifically for this, if you go to edmonton.ca/Dutch elm, that's your landing spot, which is going to be the best place for you to understand what you can do to help prevent the spread. You know, those three key things that I spoke about, as well as helping people understand the signs and symptoms to look for, how to identify an elm. What are some of the things that you would expect to see on an elm that was infected by Dutch elm disease, like what to look for in the leaves, what to look for in the bark, staining, some pinholes, sawdust, you know, those types of things to look for in the elms so that we can stay on top of it, and how to notify somebody through 311 so that one of our integrated pest management team members or an urban forester could come by and take a look at that tree and help Edmontonians out. For those who have elms on their private property, we've been doing a lot of work in the last 5 years on helping to educate homeowners who have elms on their property. We have identified all of the elms within the city on private property, so we have an inventory, and we'll send out mailers for those that have them on like how to properly care for your elm, guidelines around pruning, making sure that you're pruning within the authorized window, which is coming up. It's October to March, but pruning outside of that really creates a risk because elm beetles are attracted to freshly pruned trees. So we want to be making sure that we're pruning during the season when they're not active. As far as languages, most of the resources that are available on the City of Edmonton websites are English, but I do know that the city is, has a significant focus on making sure that resources that most people use are available in a multitude of languages. But as far as how it would be translated for newcomers who maybe English wasn't their first language, that would be something that we'd have to take away. But I do know that we can be pretty accommodating, and if there was some requests for some of our material to be translated, I'm sure that we could accommodate that.
Okay, so there's potential to be working with newcomer organizations in order to ensure that this information can get to as many people as possible.
I think that's what makes Edmonton so great. Is it really is a network of communities, and the community leagues and how strong communities are is really what makes Edmonton a fantastic city to be in, and so inclusive and make you feel like you belong. So if there are residents who are perhaps have some questions around what this means to them or how they could get more information, and they're not quite sure how to navigate that space, I would encourage them to reach out to their community leagues or 311 and tell them what it is that they're looking for. It's the one thing that I've seen in Edmonton is we're very accommodating and want to make sure that people understand and are empowered to take agency in caring for their property and being an upstanding member in the community.
So it really sounds like in combating invasive diseases or pests and species, that it is a collaborative effort.
And we do have volunteer programs. Like I'll think about our Partners in Parks programs or Spot It, Remove It. We have volunteer weed spotting, weed pulling, and maintaining some of our horticulture beds within our park space that is volunteer led. So we have a small team within the city that really just helps empower communities to do some great work within their community, because we always have people that are wanting to get more involved, wondering how they can do that safely and effectively. And that's what these types of programs are for, is to help give them the resources and share the information so that they know what to look for and can get involved and be empowered.
Awesome. So Mark, thank you so much for taking this time to chat with me. Just to wrap things up, in terms of Dutch elm disease, what should people be looking out for? And if they spot it, how can they get that information to the city of Edmonton?
Okay, yeah, and thank you again for the opportunity, and thanks for sharing this information. It really is a joint effort between the city, our provincial and federal partners, and most importantly, the residents and the communities. So the three big things: don't import firewood, burn it where you buy it. Remove bark beetle habitat. So that means keeping your elm trees properly pruned during the appropriate period of time, and disposing of that wood in an appropriate manner. And what I can tell residents is that the Edmonton Waste Management Center is ready and prepared to accept elm wood free of charge for all residents. So if you do have an elm tree, if you do have some elm wood around, then please bring it to the Edmonton Waste Management Center. They're ready and prepared to receive that free of charge. So that's really helps with removing the bark beetle habitat. And then lastly, know the signs. And your landing spot for that is edmonton.ca/Dutch elm. It's got like lots of images there on what to look for, how to identify an elm, what the signs and symptoms are. So the yellow curling, flagging leaves, some staining underneath the bark, and maybe some indications of burrowing in the bark, seeing like little pinholes with sawdust. That could be an indication of bark beetles that are making their home there. And if you have any questions, 311 is your best resource, and we'll make sure that we get people out there to help and connect with people to help them navigate this space. So it really is a joint effort. We've been doing a lot of proactive work in communicating over the last decade, but it really felt like Edmonton was almost immune to it, and that's partly in part because of all of the great proactive work that people have been doing. But now that it's arrived in our city, this is something that we're really going to have to stay on top of for the years to come, and we need everybody's help. So the more that people can get involved in helping to proactively prevent the spread within the city, the better. And this is another great opportunity with your platform to share that with people.
Awesome. Mark, thank you so much. And together, let's help protect Edmonton.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Have any stories you'd like us to share or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.